1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out of here. All right, confirm you guys can hear me. Yes, very, very good. To recap here, we had an absolutely crazy start. We have yet to see a full replay of everything that happened, but the end result is that Felipe Massa and Carlos Sainz are out of the race. They evidently had contact with one another, believe that Massa punted Sainz out of the way and into the barriers, and Sebastian Vettel has damage on the right side end fence of his front wing. Vettel did not have the best start, and Max Verstappen, however, did have a great start. He jumped up from P5 to P2. The safety car has been deployed to clean up that damage at the first chicane as they are continuing to remove the car of Carlos Sainz from the barriers. He stuffed that car well and truly deep into those tire barriers. However, he is okay. He has gotten out of the car under his own power, and the marshals are simply trying to remove what we've got. Fernando Alonso is currently classified P12, so he has not moved up. Stoffel Van Dorn, however, has moved up a lot. He is in P11. At the moment, the cars out of the race are Felipe Massa and Carlos Sainz. So far, the big mover, however, is Kevin Magnussen, actually. He is up 5 spots. He's currently classified P13. However, Max Verstappen making up 3 starts at the start of the race, basically in the first corner, going up from 5th to 2nd. So Max Verstappen may be having something to say about this. We are still running behind the safety car, of course. Felipe Massa unsure what happened to him. He did not get into Carlos Sainz. Therefore, he got hit by somebody else, and I'm not entirely sure by whom at this point. We're continuing to run behind the safety car, and official word from race control, the Turn 3 incident involving cars 19 and 55, that is Massa and Sainz, is under investigation. Massa's car has been removed from the run-out area in the second chicane. It's now safely behind the fence there, and Carlos Sainz's car, I believe, has now been towed away. Lance Stroll continuing to run in P15. Meanwhile, the safety car is coming in at the end of the lap. Lights are now out on top of the safety car. Lewis Hamilton now starting to back the field up into the hairpin. Lewis Hamilton, of course, effectively becomes the safety car. He will pick the right moment to go. Of course, he's not allowed to overtake the safety car before it crosses the pit lane entrance. Sebastian Vettel has not chosen to pit to repair damage to that front wing. Again, the right side of his front wing is well askew. We'll see if that creates any problems down these long straights. I think it well might, as it was flapping around wildly from the brief onboard that we were able to see. Green flags are up, and Hamilton is now resuming racing speeds. Max Verstappen behind. Lots of debris flying off of one of the cars in the background there. No idea what that was. Max Verstappen challenging for the lead here into the final chicane. I think he potentially overdid that, though, and he's now falling into the clutches of Valtteri Bottas. Will he be able to defend? Verstappen has the inside line into turn 1, and indeed he does defend his position. Sebastian Vettel outbraking himself tremendously, and I notice that the right side of that front wing is now missing from Sebastian Vettel's car. That debris we saw in the background on the restart, that must have come from Vettel. Whoa! Kimi Räikkönen off the circuit there, throwing up a lot of dust. He's lost a position to one of the Force Indias, and he's almost about to lose a second one. Räikkönen dirt tracking it here in the opening laps at Montreal. I can confirm Sebastian Vettel is missing the right side main plane of his front wing. The base main plane element is there, the neutral section of the wing. However, all of the cascade elements are missing from that wing. He will be suffering tremendously in the corners, particularly the right-hand corners. Also, it appears that a portion of the wing, the pieces that do remain, have lodged themselves into the right front suspension uprights. So Vettel may be in some trouble with that. I would be making a pit stop if I were him. Yes, timing and scoring right now showing Valtteri Bottas one lap down. However, that is not correct. Bottas is running in P3 on the lead lap. Well, so far, this has been a rather ridiculous Canadian Grand Prix, only 5 laps into it. Hopefully things settle down a little bit here, because I can barely wrap my head around everything that's starting to happen. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, pulling out a little bit of a gap over Max Verstappen to the tune of 1.5 seconds, almost 1.6 through the hairpin. Verstappen, however, is managing to hold off Valtteri Bottas and actually beginning to gap him slightly. We do not have a good timing and scoring figure between Bottas and Verstappen at this point, because Bottas still classified a lap down on timing and scoring. Things recycling now. There we go. The gap between Verstappen and Bottas now just about 1 second. Sebastian Vettel coming into the pits undoubtedly to replace that front wing, because there are pieces of it that are just flailing about, the little pieces that do remain of the right side of that end fence. Vettel up on the jacks, and they are removing the nose cone. Here comes the new nose cone. And just checking to make sure there's no other damage on the car. In and out, clean as you like. New wing for Sebastian Vettel. Yes, I was just about to note that. That is Ferrari's first nose change of the season as far as I can recall. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton resets fastest lap, 1:17.752. Compare that to Max Verstappen's 1:18.076. Hamilton is about 0.3 per lap faster than Max Verstappen at this point. Bottas running in the mid-118s. His last lap time, a 1:18.867. No, that was for Daniel Ricciardo. Bottas' last lap time of 1:17.934. He is slower still than Max Verstappen, who just did a 1:17.515. If McLaren were to win today, everybody in front of them would have to drop out. That's the only thing that could cause a McLaren win. And I'm not talking about the raft race. McLaren, in case you didn't know, they won the traditional raft race here at Montreal yesterday afternoon. So, yes. So you can technically say that McLaren have won a race this year. Let's see, in replay here, whoa, yes! In replay with Romain Grosjean, he is the one who got into Carlos Sainz and punted him out of the race. Grosjean, however, he obviously continued, and I can't tell, from this shot anyway, how much damage there is on that Haas. There was front wing damage on that Haas. Grosjean, I'm not entirely sure if the sensors managed to clean up that radio transmission completely, because I'm pretty sure I caught a WTF from Rogro there. Grosjean is still in the race. He's classified P17. His last lap time, however, was a 1:23.022. He is the slowest car that is still running. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton resets fastest lap yet again, 1:16.969. Turn 3 incident between Massa and Sainz will be investigated after the race, the official word from race control. Jolyon Palmer currently classified P14. He is behind Lance Stroll and in front of Marcus Ericsson. I completely expect the Swede to overtake Palmer at any point now. And at this point, I think even Sebastian Vettel will probably overtake Palmer in a few seconds. Vettel currently classified as the last car running in P18, however he's lapping in the mid-117s. Everybody around him is lapping in the 119s. Grosjean has picked up the pace once again. His last lap time was a 1:19.5. Things are starting to settle down a little bit at the front. Lewis Hamilton has not reset fastest lap on this last lap. Max Verstappen, gap is still building a bit between Hamilton and Verstappen, is now at 3.4 seconds. The gap between Verstappen and Bottas is holding pretty steady at 1.9 seconds. Bottas has absolutely nothing to respond to Max Verstappen with. This is interesting. I do wonder if maybe there was some contact between he and Verstappen at the start. Couldn't really see that from the replays. I didn't think there was, but there was an awful lot of dust thrown up in turn 1, so anything could have happened through there. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton resets fastest times in sectors 1 and 2. 21.234 sector 1, 24.408 in sector 2. Is Hamilton about to reset fastest lap? I do very much think so. Stand by for that. Hamilton 0.3 faster than Verstappen in Sector 1, 0.4 faster in Sector 2, just waiting for that Sector 3 time, and of course the ultimate lap time. Hamilton, fastest lap, 1:16.296. Personal best in Sector 3, but not session best, is a 30.654 in Sector 3. Compare that to Verstappen's 30.947. Hamilton 0.4 of a second faster than Max Verstappen in Sectors 2 and 3. Yes, the McLaren MP420, still my all-time favorite race car. And, oh no, on the side-by-side view here on NBC, Max Verstappen has ground to a halt. We cannot see at the moment what has happened. I can't see any obvious damage on the car, at least from this angle. Virtual safety car is out. I see all the wings and all the wheels still on that Red Bull, so it does appear to be some sort of electronics or mechanical failure for Max Verstappen. He is stopped on the outside at the exit of Turn 2. Virtual safety car is out. Max has not yet gotten out of the car. He has removed the steering wheel. Christian Horner looking bemused, as you might imagine. Verstappen now getting out of the car. At this point, I would say the safety car could be a safer bet here because this is a blind section of track. You come out of Turn 2 and you can't see the apex of that little right-hand sweeper here. So perhaps if they can't get this car recovered quickly, and I can't see an obvious gap in the fence through which to push that car, they might want to put the safety car out again, only here on lap 11. We cannot see at this time what actually happened with Max. He just stopped the car on the outside of the Turn 2 exit. He is out of the car and there's no obvious sign of damage, so it does not appear to be a crash of any sort. Could be any sort of mechanical failure at this point. Engine, gearbox, electronics. I couldn't see any smoke out the back of the car, so obviously whatever it was wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to stop the car. I have not seen Kimi. He is currently classified P5. We are, of course, under virtual safety car conditions, so the field is neutralized, including the gaps between all of the cars. On board with Verstappen in replay. Let's see what happens here. Watch the telemetry. Engine pickup seemed very sluggish as he got back on the power, and then it just cut out entirely. Some sort of disconnect between the commanded throttle input and the actual throttle position on the engine, I would say. We could get a good signal from the potentiometer on the pedal, but the engine was very sluggish to pick up, and then it just stopped. The engine did not shut down, however. He had to do that manually. And there is some sort of debris underneath the bridge approaching turn 8. That is the third chicane. It looks like it could be a baseball cap of some kind. I don't imagine that would cause a dangerous situation for these drivers, but it might get itself into a cooling duct or something like that and cause a mechanical issue, so we should probably get that cleaned up as well, currently here running under the virtual safety car. The other Renault-powered cars here, we might, if it is a Renault problem and not a Red Bull problem with the way the electronics are set up on that chassis, potentially there could be other problems with the Renault engines in the backs of the other cars, namely the Renault factory cars. So it's a possibility. If anybody is interested, there is also coverage here, at least in the United States, Spanish language coverage. Univision is covering the race, and NBC is currently in commercial break, but Univision is not. So we're still running here under virtual safety car. Apparently Verstappen's car is rather slow to be recovered. I was right. I did not see any evident hole in the barrier through which they could push that car, so this is taking a while. Still running under virtual safety car. And the virtual safety car period is ending, we've just been told. Virtual safety car period has been stubbed down. Green flags are out. We are racing again. The gap between Hamilton and now Bottas in P2 due to the retirement of Max Verstappen, 6.1 seconds. Daniel Ricciardo has been promoted to P3 by default. He is 4.6 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Drive-through penalty for car number 26. Car number 26 is Daniel Kvyat, failing to regain position before the safety car line on the formation lap. That is a drive-through penalty now for Daniel Kvyat. Also, let's not forget, yes, we are making jokes right now about a potential McLaren victory. However, remember the 2007 race, also punctuated by multiple safety car periods, I believe 4 of them, including the crash for Robert Kubica. Remember that Super Aguri in that race, Takuma Sato was fighting with Fernando Alonso, who was in the McLaren back then, for P6, and I believe Takuma Sato managed to finish 6th, maybe it was 7th, but it was well in the points that day, all the way back in 2007, so strange things have happened involving Hondas in Canada. Couple laps now back under green flag running conditions. Bottas can make no inroads on his teammate at this time. The gap remains about 6.5 seconds. Sergio Perez, however, goes fastest of all in Sector 3. He's currently running P4. His last lap time of 1:17.192. Compare that to Hamilton's current last lap time of a 1:16.706. Daniel Kvyat has served his drive-through penalty. He rejoins in P11 behind Nico Hülkenberg. And let's see, we have Kevin Magnussen fighting with Lance Stroll. That is for P8. Nico Hülkenberg waiting to pick up the pieces of that mess. Lance Stroll actually not having a bad afternoon so far. Up to P9. Of course, his teammate Felipe Massa was punted out on lap 1. Kevin Magnussen not having a bad day either. He is the big mover of the race, up 10 spots from his starting position. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, currently running in P12. Everybody around him is running in the 118s or even 119s. Vettel lapping happily in the 117.1s. He should be moving up the field very quickly. He has just overtaken Daniel Kvyat for P11. Kimi Räikkönen in the pits. Looks like a normal scheduled pit stop for Ferrari. He remains on the ultra softs as far as I can tell, trying to find the sidewall markings there in the shadow. Yes, he remains on those ultra softs. Kevin Magnussen now under investigation, supposedly for overtaking under the virtual safety car. Waiting to see a replay on this, and we are getting it. Seeing a replay of the pass he just made on Lance Stroll. I don't think that was under safety car or virtual safety car conditions. Meanwhile, off camera here, down to Ricardo pits and out. Good stop by the Red Bull boys. Ricardo goes on to the soft compounds. So far, Hamilton, Bottas, Perez, and Ocon have yet to stop at the front. Fernando Alonso, by virtue of Ricardo's pit stop, now moves up to P5. Sebastian Vettel's next victim is Lance Stroll. He's all over his gearbox through the hairpin. However, I think the Mercedes engine in that Williams is going to have a little bit more grunt down the straight. We shall see. Vettel in the toe of Stroll, however, not quite enough room left down the straight to make a move happen. He'll have DRS assistance down the start-finish straight. We'll see if he could do anything. I tend to think he cannot. Yes, I do have to say, the Ferrari engine does sound pretty good, all things considered. Ferrari tend to make very good-sounding engines, and this goes back all the way to their early days when they were running the low-displacement V12s. They don't quite sound melodic as much as they sound harmonic, if that makes any sense. Obviously, the more cylinders you have, the more combustion events you have going on, and with different modes of principal tones and overtones and whatever, you can have some very nice harmonics happening. But Ferrari, they've made a decent sounding V6, I must say. Yes, Fernando Alonso currently classified P5 and now down P6 again on timing and scoring. Not entirely sure what has happened. Yes, the straight line speed in that Williams is something of legend. I'm pretty sure that Williams have filed a patent for traveling faster than the speed of light in a straight line. However, don't ask them to turn any corners anytime soon. Fernando Alonso now falling into the clutches of Kimi Räikkönen. Let's see how slow this McLaren is in a straight line. Remember yesterday in qualifying, Fernando Alonso only hitting 194 miles an hour in the speed trap. Everybody else was well over 200. And Kimi Räikkönen makes very easy work of Fernando Alonso on the back straight. Alonso in Raikkonen's draft, however, down start finish, but that Ferrari pulls away so easily. The Honda is no match for any other engine on the grid, as we all well know by now. Here's an interesting thought I had the other day. If anybody has a Honda lawnmower, if that lawnmower were eligible for racing in Formula One, there is a very good possibility that your lawnmower would have scored points this year, particularly in Australia. Everybody who finished the race scored points, so if your lawnmower would run for 2 hours, as it certainly would, and likely does at least once a week, your lawnmower could score points in Formula One this year. Think about that. And the problems are starting for McLaren. McLaren telling Alonso to avoid short shifting between third and fourth gear. That can only mean one thing. The power of dreams is turning into a nightmare once again. Valtteri Bottas in the pits, first of the Mercedes men. Off of the Ultra Softs and onto the soft compounds for Valtteri Bottas. Good pit stop. We'll see where he resumes. He should very comfortably resume in P3. Esteban Ocon now through the pit stop rotation up into second place. Mercedes thinking of the soft tire for Lewis Hamilton on the next pit stop. They've already put Bottas on the soft, so yep, I would say probably a safe bet. Mercedes citing the fact that Ricciardo is currently on those softs and he's running in the 17.2s at the moment. Lewis Hamilton running almost exactly 1 second faster, doing a 16.269. Pit stop certainly on the way for Lewis Hamilton. Nico Hülkenberg currently looking at the back of Lance Stroll. That Williams is very fast in the straight line. We all know that. It's pulling away from the Renault on the straights. However, the Renault is beginning to reel it in through all of the corners. Hülkenberg makes a mistake, though, through the third chicane, and he has to take the shortcut around the second element of the corner. Into the hairpin here. Stroll goes wide. Hülkenberg senses blood here, and they're side by side through the exit of the hairpin. The better straight line speed of that Williams, though, certainly helping him out. Hülkenberg takes the draft. They're side by side down the back straight. Hülkenberg with DRS assistance makes easy work of Lance Stroll into the final chicane. Lance Stroll recovers into the pits regardless. Lance Stroll into the pits. Onto the super soft tires. And we confirm 5-second penalty for Kevin Magnussen overtaking under the virtual safety car. The video evidence is pretty clear. Ocon absolutely on it right now. He is running in P2, and he is making Bottas fight for it. He did pull that dummy into the pits, just trying to put a little bit of psychological warfare on Valtteri Bottas, and perhaps it's working. The gap is just under 1 second. Bottas is obviously gaining on him, but Ocon is in second place, and he is running there on merit at the moment. That is really cool. Yes, I've said this many times, McLaren would be in a far better position had they retained Ron Dennis. Ron Dennis, the man pretty much single-handedly responsible for the world championships that McLaren have won over the last 30 years, the man responsible for signing Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Mika Hakkinen, Lewis Hamilton, the list just... Every single one of those drivers went on to win at least one world championship for McLaren. So Ron Dennis knew what he was doing. Why they got rid of him is beyond me, and now we see the state of McLaren per result. Nico Hülkenberg on one of the Haas cars. I believe that was Kevin Magnussen. Indeed it was. Big straight line speed disparity between them. Nico Hülkenberg now in P9. Pascal Wehrlein, the first car to go a lap down, currently running P17, working lap 30 of 70, and now Lance Stroll goes a lap down, so we already have cars off the lead lap. Magnussen and Kvyat having quite the energetic fight at the end of the lap. Magnussen weaving all over the circuit trying to block Daniel Kvyat. However, Kvyat with the DRS advantage makes light work of him into turn 1. Magnussen slightly out of position into turn 1, catching a big slide into turn 2. However, he holds on to it but loses the position to Daniel Kvyat. Kvyat now up to P10. Bottas now with DRS on Esteban Ocon. He is not able to catch up with him. That Force India is very fast in a straight line. No DRS assistance for Ocon, of course, as nobody is within 1 second in front of him. So Bottas with DRS and Mercedes power unable to catch Esteban Ocon down the straight. Camera's now cutting over to the Mercedes pits. Toto Wolff looking pensive. They must be thinking of pitting Hamilton. He's done 34 laps on the ultra-soft tires. That is getting close to half the race distance, and it's no joke that the ultra-softs can do half a race distance, but we've got to get Hamilton on new tires pretty soon. And undoubtedly, they're thinking about that. Valtteri Bottas still unable to get past Esteban Ocon down the straights. He's starting to think about doing it through the corners. Undoubtedly, that's his only opportunity to do this. Ocon has also been out there on 35 laps on these ultra-soft tires, just like Lewis Hamilton. Apparently, they're still in good enough nick to be competitive at the front. Bottas is unable to stick with Ocon through Sector 2. That is absolutely extraordinary. Mercedes in the pit lane. It must be for Lewis Hamilton. Indeed it is. In the pits with car number 44. Hopefully the stop is clean. Stopped on his marks. Tires off, tires on, car on the ground, and off you go. Lewis Hamilton goes on to the super softs. Ocon in the pits. Super softs for Ocon as well. Sebastian Vettel manages to... Yes, he manages to overtake Esteban Ocon. At no, that was Raikkonen. Raikkonen overtakes Ocon. Vettel has not. Vettel still running in P7. Ocon rejoins in P6. Will Vettel have the opportunity on warmer tires, although much more worn tires, to get past Esteban Ocon? We shall see. Kimi Raikkonen having a quiet day in P5. Yes, you mentioned Ferrari's position, currently running P5 and P7. Obviously, things did not go well at the start for them. Alonso radio. Alonso saying that the power that he has in this engine mode is embarrassing. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. However, Ferrari, after something goes pear-shaped for them at the beginning of the race, they don't seem to have a good plan B. In the years past, we used to hear about McLaren and now Mercedes talking about Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, all that kind of thing. It doesn't seem that Ferrari ever have a reasonable Plan B. They just sort of hope for the best at the start, and if it doesn't happen, they sort of resign themselves to run in the mid-pack. And not entirely sure that's the best way to go for winning a championship, guys. Speaking of Fernando Alonso, he has done the entire race on this set of Ultra Softs at the moment. He's running in P8. He's yet to make a pit stop. Yes, you're very correct. That is the Italian way. We're going to go and we're going to, how you say, win. We're going to win everything. And when it doesn't happen, they're just like, okay, we no win. that seems to be the way Ferrari run everything. When it goes their way, it really goes their way. But when it doesn't, they just kind of, they act as filler for the TV cameras. Running on board here with Esteban Ocon, and not entirely sure why they've done this, but you can see the Johnny Walker logo on the top of the Force India steering wheel. It is inverted relative to the onboard camera position. Why have they done that? Wouldn't you want that the right way round for the onboard camera view? Can't quite figure that one out. Working lap 38 of 70, Lewis Hamilton remains in the lead. His last lap time, 1:16.727. The gap between he and Valtteri Bottas in P2 is 10.7 seconds, so no chance of Bottas challenging Hamilton, at least at this stage in the Grand Prix. In replay, Kimi Räikkönen, a brief lockup heading into the hairpin. No real problem, just a little bit of a flat spot on his right front tire. Shouldn't be too much to worry about for the Finn. Sebastian Vettel, currently running in P7. He is 2.5 seconds behind Esteban Ocon for P6, who himself is just half a second behind Kimi Räikkönen. It'd be very interesting to see if that Force India can do anything to the Ferrari. Of course, Mercedes power in that Force India, and Ferrari with that, well, Ferrari engine. It is very quick, but perhaps not quite as powerful when it comes down to the ultimate definition of straight line speed as the Mercedes. Of course, how much oil are Ferrari burning in those combustion chambers? Who knows, but at the moment, the Force India is still behind the Ferrari. Ocon with DRS down the start-finish straight. He's not quite close enough to attack Kimi into turn 1, but he is hanging with him. Even in the turbulent air behind the Ferrari, the Force India is hanging on. Getting an interesting message here from race control. There is an additional 10-second penalty now being applied for Daniel Kvyat, and they say that the original 10-second penalty, the drive-through penalty that he already served, was incorrect. So if I'm reading this correctly, they are now levying a second penalty against Daniel Kvyat for the same infraction for which he has already served a penalty. What? On board with Lewis Hamilton here. Business as usual for the Englishman. Very controlled, and he is well out in front of this race to the tune of 11.9 seconds. Hamilton definitely not going for it as much as he could. He's doing a fair amount of lift and coast into the corners just to recharge a little bit more energy into those battery packs, allowing the inertia of the car to be captured a little bit for deployment later on in the lap. Very cool. And you can visually see the gap on the screen there. Lewis Hamilton already through turns 1 and 2. Bottas just getting there now. Lance Stroll looking at Romain Grosjean for P13. They're running through turns 1 and 2. Stroll got awfully close to the back of the Haas down the start-finish straight, but not quite close enough. Watching Stroll's steering wheel movement here, we commented on that yesterday, how much jerky back-and-forth motion he had. There is still quite a bit of that, however, he's going through some of the more bumpy sections of the racetrack at the moment, so I don't want to judge that quite yet. However, under braking, yes, that car does appear to be nervous in his hands. Compare that to Felipe Massa when we've seen on board with him. It is a lot smoother with the Brazilian. Action in the pit lanes. We have Pascal Wehrlein in the pits as well as Kimi Räikkönen. Let's see, off of the Super Softs and on to, I believe, another set of the Ultra Softs. We'll have to get confirmation. Yes, it is another set of the Ultra Softs for Kimi Räikkönen. He should be good to the end. Meanwhile, Nico Hülkenberg all over the back of Fernando Alonso for P8. In replay here, Fernando Alonso passing the wall of champions, getting awfully close. However, he holds on to it. Also, the slow motion showing some very nice resonant vibrations running through the aero appendages of that McLaren. I have to say, if they did not have that Honda engine, that McLaren would probably be a pretty decent car. In replay as well, Lance Stroll getting past Romain Grosjean. Stroll now running in P13. Nico Hülkenberg passing Fernando Alonso down the back straight, no problem at all. And Fernando Alonso now in the pits. Alonso, this is his first stop of the Grand Prix. Let's see if Alonso emerges from this pit stop or if they're going to retire the car. On to the super soft tires, and Alonso does rejoin the race. The Honda has not exploded yet. Esteban Ocon And Sergio Perez now coming up on Daniel Ricciardo for P3. That is for track position. It is a straight race between them. Perez is gaining on the Red Bull. And in replay here, Lance Stroll seeing a big lockup. Can't quite make out where that is. I believe it's into the hairpin. Nice big flat spot now across the right front tire of the Williams. We'll see how that affects him. Stroll now looking at Stoffel Van Dorn for P12. Let's see the difference in straight line speed. Oh yeah, no chance. Van Dorn putting a big block, however, on Lance Stroll, and Stroll was unable to overtake the McLaren down the back straight. However, there should be no issue doing so down the start-finish straight, and indeed there is not. Van Dorn maintains position into turn 1. Van Dorn is driving very dirtily, if we can coin an adverb here. Van Dorn is in no business here fighting with Lance Stroll. There's no power in that Honda power unit, unless they have turned it up to level 15 out of 10, and at that point the problem will take care of itself for Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll finally makes it around Stoffel Van Dorn. Ricciardo with both of the Force Indias, and now a Ferrari in the hands of Sebastian Vettel close behind. This is going to be interesting for P3. I think either one of the Force Indias could easily get P3 today, but Sebastian Vettel is coming. Stroll now looking at Fernando Alonso. Will Alonso give Stroll any trouble? Yes, he does, although I have to say Alonso did not change his line, unlike Stoffel Van Dorn. Alonso will not give Stroll any problem down the straights, however, I do divine. Well, Alonso has already gone on record this race once saying that the engine power is embarrassing, so I don't think anything could be more embarrassing for Alonso at this point. Let's see, Stroll has DRS, Alonso jumps out of the way, and yes, Stroll makes easy work of Fernando Alonso. Alonso literally jumped out of the way. Williams now applauding wildly to see their man in the points. However, I don't think that was exactly an overtake done on merit. That was a McLaren after all. Let's see, what can happen here for P3? Daniel Ricciardo has it. And Ricciardo saying that he has some issues with the tires, says that it's difficult to lean on them. However, the Force India guys are cheering their men on, saying, come on, P3 is for the taking, go do it. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel hoping that the Force Indias and the Red Bull all take each other out. Sebastian Vettel unable to make any ground on Esteban Ocon. We've been saying that name a lot so far this race, and there's a good reason for it. That Force India is quick. Yes, that actually is a good bit of trivia. Australia, France, Mexico, and Germany will all have a Grand Prix for the first time ever next year. That is very cool to see. The only things that we're missing from this World Championship now are Imola, and I would really like to see Istanbul come back. That was a really cool track. Sebastian Vettel in the pits. Very quick stop by the Ferrari guys. I can't see what tires he's gone on to. I would assume that he has gone back onto the Ultra Softs, however, we'll confirm that. Meanwhile, Kimi Räikkönen resets fastest lap of the race, 1:15.659. Very quick. He's the only guy in the 1:15s. Yes, I have switched over to Univision to watch this because NBC at the moment are still covering yesterday's raft race. Of course, McLaren won that. But there's a battle going on for the Grand Prix at the moment. I've heard about the proposed changes to Monza, however, I don't think they've actually happened. Any footage that I've seen of Monza recently, taken within the last few months, I don't see any changes to the layout whatsoever. I do like the proposed changes, but so far they don't seem to have materialized. Basically, the changes are they're going to delete the first chicane. They're going to cut Curva Grande quite a bit. It's going to be a kink now, coming off of the start-finish straight, moving off to the right, a high-speed kink. They're going to... how would I best describe it? There's going to be a chicane now at the end of... basically a 120-degree kink, coming off of the start-finish straight, using part of the old junior circuit in the infield of Monza, and then there's going to be a chicane coming back on, rejoining the exit of what is now Curva Grande, and then they're going to go through De La Roccia and continue the lap as it currently is. But it would be very, very fast for the first sector. Yeah, as it is, there's no problem with Curva Grande. The problem is the first chicane, because if they didn't have to go through that first chicane, Curva Grande would be completely flat out. It already is completely flat out, but they would be entering it in 7th or 8th gear, and it would be full speed all the way around. So running low downforce at a place like Monza, they'd probably be having apex speeds in excess of 200 miles an hour at Curva Grande, which would be very, very cool indeed. Meanwhile, working lap 54 of 70, Lewis Hamilton continues to lead to the tune of 12.661 seconds over his teammate Valtteri Bottas. P3 for Daniel Ricciardo, who trails Bottas by a further 2 seconds. Perez in 4th, Ocon in 5th, Raikkonen in 6th, and Vettel in 7th. That fight for P3 still nowhere near done. Daniel Kvyat complaining of a vibration coming from his engine. He is in the pits, and there's no particular sense of urgency to this stop. This looks terminal for the Russian. Kvyat has shut the car off. You can hear the turbo spooling down. They are putting new tires on it, inexplicably at this point. They cannot get the right rear wheel mounted on that Toro Rosso. Perhaps there is some damage to the spindle, or they have... It is absolute chaos here at the Toro Rosso pits. They put a set of super softs on, and now they are bringing out a set of soft compounds. They're literally running them out of the garage. They have now put the soft compound tires on the car. However, Daniel was instructed to shut the engine down, and there's no evidence of Kvyat getting back underway. Sergio Perez is now pleading with the Force India Brain Trust to allow them to race Daniel Ricciardo. Apparently there was some sort of directive given to both Perez and Ocon not to fight with Ricciardo too hard, but Perez wants to get going, as does Ocon, and I think Perez is slightly worried that Ocon may be challenging his position at the moment for P4. So Perez wants to go racing. Danik Fiat apparently has rejoined the race after that absolute disaster of a pit stop. He is now 2 laps down. They're continuing to wave blue flags at him at every possible juncture. Lewis Hamilton has put him 2 laps down, and Bottas will probably be doing so very shortly. Force India now telling Sergio Perez to allow Ocon through to try to allow the Frenchman to attack down to Ricciardo, and if they are unable to get Ocon past Ricciardo, they will switch the positions back as they currently run, Perez over Ocon. We'll see if that actually happens. To Force India's proposition, Sergio Perez has responded, "No, I'm not going to let him through. Give me a chance to fight with Ricciardo as well as to get into the lap traffic and see what we can do. There will be an opportunity," says the Mexican. We will see how this transpires. Undoubtedly, the debrief tonight is going to be rather fiery. "12 laps to go in this 2017 Canadian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton continues to lead. He's on the super soft tires. He's done 25 laps on said tires. His last lap time was 1:16.530. Kimi Räikkönen, still the fastest car on the track, Sebastian Vettel now the fastest car on the track. The Ferraris are both running in the 115s. They're the only cars in the 115s. Vettel's last lap time, 1:15.252. Räikkönen's last lap, 1:15.733. Danik Fiat back into the pits, and Toro Rosso now pushing him into the garage. I think we saw that coming a mile away. Yes, Baku is going to be an absolute snooze fest, and I think we're all very much anticipating that. It's a terrible race. I have no idea. First of all, I have no idea why Formula One had any inkling of going into Azerbaijan. It's the most obscure place on Earth. There's nothing there. There's nothing that place has to offer, and the circuit is really terrible. The circuit is less logistically logical than Macau, and that's really saying a lot. And you've got the longest straight of the season there, so there's no chance of overtaking, and the corners are all way too tight and way too slow. It's really bad. 10 laps to go here in the Canadian Grand Prix. Currently leading is Lewis Hamilton to the tune of 14.6 seconds over Valtteri Bottas. In P3 is Daniel Ricciardo, who is embroiled in a fight for P3 with Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, Kimi Raikkonen, and Sebastian Vettel. Cars 3 through 7 are pretty much running nose to tail for the most part on track. There is a bit of a considerable gap between Ocon and Raikkonen. However, it's all within striking distance to everybody in that pack. P8 for Nico Hülkenberg, P9 for Lance Stroll, so a good run in the points for the Canadian. The final points-paying position currently held by Fernando Alonso in P10. P11 for Romain Grosjean, P12 for Julian Palmer, P13 for Kevin Magnussen, 14 for Marcus Ericsson, 15th for Stoffel Van Dorn. Both McLarens are still running at this point. P16 for Pascal Wehrlein, and still classified for the moment in P17, although he has stopped, Daniel Kvyat. Out of the race are Max Verstappen, Felipe Massa, and Carlos Sainz. Massa and Sainz were taken out in lap 1 incidents, and Max Verstappen stopped shortly thereafter with some sort of failure on that Red Bull. Sebastian Vettel, fastest lap of the race, 1:14.964. Obviously fastest car on the racetrack, fastest of all in sectors 1 and 3. Lewis Hamilton, by contrast, his last lap time, 1:15.871. Ocon and Perez all running in the 1:16s, as is Daniel Ricciardo. The lead that Lewis has over Valtteri started really at the beginning of the race because Max Verstappen had been running in P2. A virtual safety car was brought out due to debris, and Max Verstappen happened to stop during that virtual safety car period. Under the virtual safety car conditions, the gaps between all the cars are neutralized. So the gaps that drivers build up between each other remain when the virtual safety car is out. Because the gap between Hamilton and Bottas was really a gap between first and third at that point, Bottas could not regain the track position that Verstappen had occupied under the virtual safety car. So when the virtual safety car period ended, the gap between Hamilton and Bottas was already over 6 seconds, and it's just continued to build from there. Yeah, Sergio Perez in 2012 in that Sauber, particularly at the Malaysian Grand Prix. That was quite a drive. There was a few laps during that race where he was really within a shot of winning it. So, yeah, Perez is very good. Raikkonen evidently having some issues here with the Ferrari. They're telling him DDC 7 on. This is some sort of a failure mode or a recycle mode for the ECU. I'm not entirely sure what the problem is for Raikkonen. He did go off in the final chicane a couple of laps ago. Potentially, there are some sort of problems with the brake-by-wire system. Of course, new for the last couple of years, the brakes are no longer mechanically connected to the pedal. It's a brake-by-wire system, so it's all done with electronic sensors. Maybe he's having brake issues, hence he missed the chicane. We shall see. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel resets fastest lap yet again, 1:14.962. Raikkonen has dropped back behind his teammate now in P7. Raikkonen's last lap time of 1:20.596. So Raikkonen is in trouble here. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton just set fastest time of all in sectors 1 and 2. He's responding probably to that pace of Sebastian Vettel, although he really has no reason to do so at this point. We'll see what the lap time here is for Lewis Hamilton. Undoubtedly, it will be fastest of the race. Lewis Hamilton, fastest lap of the race, 1:14.551. Meanwhile, the trouble continues for Kimi Raikkonen. He's having trouble understanding the engineers over the radio, and the radio transmissions themselves sound very garbled. I wonder if there is some sort of failure on that Ferrari that's creating some EMF interference and just messing with everything now. Sebastian Vettel now getting really close to Esteban Ocon, who is himself getting very close to Sergio Perez. We've got 5 laps to go, so if anybody is going to try a move, it's going to happen very soon. Force India currently on for another great result, 4th and 5th. They do not want to throw away a very good points haul. Daniel Ricciardo, meanwhile, seems to be consolidating that P3, but Sebastian Vettel smells blood. More Raikkonen radio. Raikkonen definitely having some problems with the brakes. Ferrari saying that the temperatures on the rear brakes having some high temperature readings. That is a big problem. Montreal is a very demanding circuit on the brakes in particular because we've got these long straights and tight corners, so lots of brake energy going into the system. However, Raikkonen, will he make it to the end of this race now? That is somewhat in doubt. Lapped traffic, that is, I believe, Pascal Wehrlein interfering here with Ricciardo and the Force India gaggle. Wehrlein now is in front of Sergio Perez. Sebastian Vettel all over the back of Esteban Ocon. He's going for it into turn 1. This could end in tears. Vettel forces Ocon off the circuit. Vettel did not run wide. He did not leave the circuit. He had the inside line into turn 1. However, because he came in really hot, it did force him to basically to force Ocon off the track. And now Vettel's car all over the place. He's certainly overheated those tires with that move. Will Vettel be able to do anything about Perez, or will the stewards have anything to say about that move? I think they well might. Vettel's car is all over the place. He has missed the 3rd chicane, and I do think perhaps he's going to have to let Ocon back through. Sebastian Vettel now has Perez in his sights for P4. 3 laps to go. I think he can do it, provided he can cool those tires down a little bit, because that Ferrari is on ice. That was actually a very, very dicey move, partially by Ocon and partially by Vettel. Ocon moved into the braking zone, and there was very nearly contact between the Force India and the Ferrari, and we all know what contact can look like into a corner like that. I remember Perez and Massa last year. That was a very big accident toward the end of the race. Two laps to go. We have a local yellow now out in Sector 2, trying to see where that is. Trying to see what the cause of that yellow flag is. Fernando Alonso has stopped. This is absolutely ridiculous. Fernando Alonso was once again on for points, and the McLaren has given up with 2 laps to go. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. 7 miles from the finish, and Fernando Alonso has to retire. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel makes it past Sergio Perez fair and square into the final chicane. Perez now in 5th, Vettel in 4th. Ricciardo, I think, is untouchable. Fernando Alonso has walked into the grandstands, and he is saluting the crowd. He's throwing his gloves out into the crowd. He may well want to throw his helmet into the crowd as well at this rate, because just so much. Fernando Alonso giving hugs and high fives to the spectators. Yeah. I think he's just on board with Alonso. Yes, that Honda just gave up into the 3rd chicane. No question about it. Just straight up stopped. That's something. Fernando Alonso just cannot get any luck at all with Honda products this year. He goes to the Indy 500, a completely different series, a completely different venue. Honda engine blows up at the Indy 500. Back in Formula 1 this weekend, another Honda engine blows up. Status quo for McLaren. Final lap. Meanwhile, 20 seconds ahead of Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton is about to come across and take the checkered flag. We've completely forgotten about him because he is just so far away into the distance. TV cameras have picked up Lewis Hamilton. Haven't seen much of him today because, well, not much has been happening up front. However, through the final chicane for the last time, Lewis Hamilton slaloming his way down the start-finish straight to win the 2017 Canadian Grand Prix, his 6th career victory here at Montreal, where he took his first career victory 10 years ago. Valtteri Bottas now coming across the line in P2 to complete the Mercedes 1-2 finish. Lots of points today for the Mercedes team. Daniel Ricciardo coming through the final chicane to consolidate that last place on the podium. Sebastian Vettel still going for it, and Sergio Perez defending against Esteban Ocon through the final corner. And the Force India has crossed the line in formation for 5th and 6th. Another good day for Force India. Meanwhile, Lance Stroll scoring points here in Canada. The Canadian at his home race scoring points, finishing 9th. Nice job. Lewis Hamilton pulling well off the track in the hairpin, letting the fans get a good look at he and the car as he goes past. Lots of Union Jack flags in the grandstands, and Lewis Hamilton himself with a Union Jack that he must have had stuffed in the cockpit for the Grand Prix. Our final finishing order here in the 2017 Canadian Grand Prix before any penalties are applied, if they will be applied. P1, car number 44, Lewis Hamilton. P2, his teammate, Valtteri Bottas, a 1-2 finish for Mercedes. P3, Daniel Ricciardo in the sole remaining Red Bull. P4 for Sebastian Vettel in a great recovery drive in the Ferrari. P5 for Sergio Perez of Force India. P6, his teammate Esteban Ocon, another great day for Force India. P7, Kimi Raikkonen in the second Ferrari. P8, Nico Hulkenberg for Renault. P9, Lance Stroll in the sole remaining Williams. Nice points for the Canadian. P10 for Romain Grosjean, the final points-paying position in the Haas. P11, Julian Palmer in the second Renault. P12, Kevin Magnussen for Haas. 13 for Marcus Ericsson in the Sauber. P14 for Stoffel Van Dorn, the only McLaren to make it to the end. P15, Pascal Wehrlein in the other Sauber. And P16, classified but not finishing, Fernando Alonso. The Honda engine once again said enough. Not classified at the end of this Canadian Grand Prix are Daniel Kvyat, Max Verstappen, Felipe Massa, and Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton greeting all of his teammates. Meanwhile, has anybody seen Fernando Alonso? He was last spotted in the grandstands there, so I don't know if he's actually gotten back to McLaren yet. Very cool here in the prep room, just outside the podium area. There's a screen behind the drivers where they're displaying some images of Canadian Grand Prix gone by. So many historical pictures there, and Lewis Hamilton himself is in quite a few of them, including shots of his first ever victory here back in 2007. Of course, scenes of Gilles Villeneuve as well, for whom this circuit was renamed in 1982. Also, the great Ayrton Senna featuring in that little presentation. Our Constructors' Championship for the moment, Mercedes takes the lead with 222 points over Ferrari's 214, and then a big gap for P3, Red Bull, with 112. They are 102 points behind Ferrari in the Constructors' standings. Jonathan, thank you very much for the well wishes there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm definitely going to have a lot to tell you guys about. Drivers now making their way onto the podium. Ricciardo and Bottas on the podium, and here comes Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton climbs up to the top step. Stand by for the British and German national anthems. Now the trophy presentations. The Minister for Transport for the Canadian government presenting the winner's trophy to Lewis Hamilton, who looks understandably jubilant in his achievement. Of course, he took his first career victory here way back now in 2007. Strange to think that that was 10 years ago. I remember that race like it was yesterday. Fernando Alonso is classified in P16, however, the Honda engine gave up with 2 laps to go. Fernando Alonso was last seen in the grandstands outside the third chicane. Champagne being sprayed on the podium at Montreal. We're just waiting to see who will be conducting the podium interviews today. And with the podium interviews, it is Sir Patrick Stewart. Yes, the trophies are slightly strange. They are obviously maple leafs, which is one of the national symbols of Canada. However, yeah, a little bit of an unorthodox design all around, but they look nice. I'll give them that. Lewis Hamilton, understandably jubilant here. He remembered that this is the scene of his first Grand Prix victory 10 years ago. I'm sure he is definitely having a whole bunch of thoughts at the moment about, wow, it's been 10 years and I'm still here and I'm still winning. This is pretty cool. I think the whole idea of some drivers starting with bad cars and other drivers starting in good cars, it's the way it's always worked in motorsport is you work your way into the best car. And with drivers nowadays starting Formula One younger and younger, the whole process of working yourself into a good car starts much earlier nowadays than it used to. You rightly mentioned Ayrton Senna starting in the Tolman, which was not a great car, yet he managed to do really cool things with it, including P2 at the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix in his first season in Formula One. And that was enough to earn Senna the ride with Lotus for 1985, 1986, 87, And, of course, he started to win races with Lotus. That parlayed itself into McLaren, where he took all of his World Championship titles. So drivers still have to earn their way into the top cars. The problem that we see now, though, is because drivers are starting Formula One at younger and younger ages, they start to make these contacts earlier, before they really get on the public's radar. So by the time Lewis Hamilton, surely by the time he was in GP2, he was set to drive that McLaren at some point, and then ultimately, because he did so well in GP2 in 2006, it came time for him to do that test for McLaren at the end of 06, and then for 07, there it was, the MP422 was ready, and his name was on one of them. But in terms of drivers having to work their way up, yeah, it still happens, it just happens in a slightly different way. The more traditionalists, though, still most drivers do start Formula One in what we would say a bad car. For example, Daniel Ricciardo starting in the HRT, if you remember, back in 2011. So the traditionalists are still very much alive. But take Lance Stroll, for example. Yes, he's a pay driver. We all know he comes from a lot of money, and he's come into a Williams. Perhaps it's not the best car, but the Williams is, well, this year it's no McLaren. It's far better than the McLaren, and it's certainly not a Sauber. So can we say the same thing then about Lance Stroll having things handed to him? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, Michael Schumacher's debut in the Jordan really just came down to a question of necessity. Bertrand Gachot, the normal driver for Jordan in 91 in that car, he was going to jail on an assault charge, so Jordan literally had nobody else to drive the car for that weekend at Spa. Eddie Jordan knew about Michael Schumacher. He saw him do great things in Formula 3 and in sports cars, so gave him a call. Schumacher was available, and that's how that debut drive was scheduled. Simple as that, really. After that drive in the Jordan, though, particularly from that qualifying session where he qualified a brilliant 7th, that got the attention of Flavio Briatore, and then that put Schumacher in the Benetton for the remainder of 91, and then, of course, that continued on for his first 2 World Championships through the end of 1995. So, yes, the drivers, whether they're good or they're just average, they still have to earn their way. And yes, for the record, Daniel Ricciardo did drink out of his shoe. Yes, Jenson Button in the Williams for the year 2000. He was that placeholder for Juan Pablo Montoya. Yeah, that Williams was a great car in that era, remember, and then Montoya, of course, went on to win a race in his first year with Williams. So, again, sometimes drivers get lucky at the beginning, and other times they have to work for it, and other times still they have worked for it before they get into the sport. So it is luck of the draw. Applying it to Lewis Hamilton, he played his cards right from the very beginning. He started karting at a very young age. He was put into contact with Ron Dennis, and for whatever reason or another, whether it was his own talent, whether it was his negotiation skills or his father's negotiation skills, but things played out right for him, and he managed to parlay all of that work in his youth into a leading drive from the word go in Formula One, and he very nearly won the championship in his first year. So the other thing that we have to remember here is, if McLaren or Ron Dennis at the time didn't think that Hamilton was good enough, they wouldn't have put him in the car. So whether a driver has time to prove himself in some of the backmarker teams or not, I think it's a little bit irrelevant. If they're good enough, they make it into the good cars. Yeah, Fangio, Farina, they definitely started in good cars. Who else? Jim Clark. He was always associated with Lotus, was he not? I mean, I think he was. I could be wrong on that, but I don't ever recall Jim Clark driving for some no-name team. So, it goes back a long way. Some drivers just play their cards right. Yep, there you go. Rosberg and Williams in 2006. Now, you could say Rosberg was the GP2 champion in 2005. It was the first year for the GP2 championship. But look at who Nico's father is. Keke Rosberg. He won his world championship with Williams, so the connection was obviously there. Rosberg, however, made it on merit. He was the GP2 champion, so you can make an argument either way for Nico Rosberg. Also, remember, motorsport initially was a second thought for Nico Rosberg because he had a scholarship to attend university in the UK studying aeronautics. So he had a plan B as well. And I think the GP2 drive and later the Formula 1 drive was really something he did simply because the opportunity presented itself, and that is truly a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And in the end, it worked out very nicely for him, considering, well, he will always be known as world champion Nico Rosberg. Some may call it luck, some may call it good business sense. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton's path into Formula 1 was rather different from what we're used to seeing. But yeah. Kovalainen started at Renault in 2007. He replaced Fernando Alonso when he moved to McLaren at the end of 2006. So the Renault lineup for 2007 was Giancarlo Fisichella, who had been there for a long time, and then Heikki Kovalainen came up from GP2. After 2007, Kovalainen moved to McLaren for 2008, where he was teammate to Lewis Hamilton. Kovalainen managed to win the 2008 Hungarian Grand Prix, and that was his first and only Grand Prix victory. Kovalainen stayed with McLaren to the end of 2009, after which time he was dropped. And beyond that, he bounced around between what was then the Lotus team, the Green Lotus team, and then did he ever run for HRT? Why do I have a Kovalainen HRT association in my head for some reason? Kovalainen's last race, however, was, I believe, the 2012 or 2013 United States Grand Prix. He deputized for Kimi Räikkönen, who was injured. I don't quite remember the circumstances, but Kovalainen did race at Austin for Lotus on one occasion. We have located Fernando Alonso. He is doing an interview with Will Buxton. He has returned from the grandstands. The NBC guy is now talking about Fernando Alonso. Yet again, he has been let down by the Honda equipment. We do wonder what his future is going to be. I tend to think his future may well be in IndyCar, because unless he is willing to bite the bullet to go back to Ferrari, if there is a seat open at the end of this year, as many people are predicting there will be, will his name be on that seat even? There is even some crazy talk that Nico Rosberg could be in the running for that Ferrari seat that'll be vacated by Kimi Räikkönen. I don't think that's going to happen, but he is being connected with it at the moment. Fernando Alonso might be the only other driver who Ferrari might consider, but would Alonso want to go back to Ferrari? I don't think so. There's probably too much bad blood there, and Alonso tends to leave teams in a rather acrimonious manner. So I don't know if it'd be possible for Alonso to go back to Maranello. He certainly will not want to stay with McLaren unless they radically overhaul everything they're doing there. But even then, McLaren effectively need a structure, a restructure from zero. So if let's say they go back to Mercedes engines, that means they have to redesign their whole concept around their car to accommodate that Mercedes engine, which is fundamentally different from the one they were running in 2014, last time they ran Mercedes power. So McLaren, even if they do make an engine switch, could well be on the back foot for yet another season while they acclimate themselves to a new power unit. So I do think the better part of valor at this point for Fernando Alonso is going to be get out of McLaren, see if there are any other opportunities in a competitive Formula One car. If not, come to the United States. We have lots of McDonald's and we have IndyCar. Sergio Perez and Kimi Räikkönen both started at Sauber. I don't think Romain Grosjean has been connected to that Ferrari seat at all. The current Formula 2 driver, Charles Leclerc, he is being connected to that Ferrari seat, as is potentially Antonio Giovinazzi, who has done a couple races this year for Sauber, deputizing for Pascal Wehrlein. Giovinazzi is currently in the Ferrari Young Driver program, but will that materialize into a race seat? Who knows? Vettel to Mercedes, I don't see it. Vettel has already invested 2 years into this Ferrari team, and it finally looks like it's paying off for them. So, no, I don't think Vettel is going to go anywhere. If anybody is going anywhere at Ferrari, it's Raikkonen, and he may well just retire at the end of this season. As much as I would hate to see Kimi go, it's time. He's been around for too long. He's not fast anymore. So, yeah, Kimi, as much as I love to have Kimi Raikkonen on the grid, as much as I personally like the guy, yeah, it's time to go, Kimi. But, yeah, I think if it's not Alonso at Ferrari, it's going to be somebody who's not currently on the grid. It's probably going to be... It's either going to be Giovinazzi, or it could be Nico Rosberg on a long shot, or it could be Charles Leclerc over from F2, Formula 2. So, we'll see. Kimi would actually be pretty awesome at commentary, particularly English commentary. I do wonder, could you imagine Kimi Räikkönen and Martin Brundle doing commentary together? Martin be like, Kimi, that's a fantastic move, isn't it? And Kimi be like, you know, it was one of those moves. You see the car and you go. So, yeah. Kimi should probably do commentary alongside Martin Brundle. That would be pretty cool. Esteban Ocon, definitely not being complimentary of Force India. Will Buxton asking him, did your team cost you a chance at your first podium? Ocon, without hesitation, saying, yes, I think so. So there's going to be some acrimony there. Yes, and I think that Vettel still is probably within the pound seat of winning this year's World Championship. They did not have a great day today, but they had a great day at Monaco 2 weeks ago, and still, I don't think the Mercedes is quite as consistent as the Ferrari when it comes down to real race pace. Ferrari had a bit of a strange afternoon today with the incidents at the start. Had that not happened, I think we would have had a straight fight between Hamilton and Vettel, so... yes, I still think Vettel is with the advantage here. Yes, and I think for Formula One in general this year, if Sebastian Vettel would be able to take that World Championship in a Ferrari, German driver, becoming a 5 times world champion, it would certainly be a very poignant thing. if Hamilton doesn't win the championship this year, he'll stay at Mercedes and he'll try to win it next year. I don't think Hamilton wants to go anywhere yet. I think we probably have at least another 5 years out of Lewis Hamilton in Formula One. So we could still see quite a few titles yet from him. Well, I mean, the therapeutic effects of the sound of a Ferrari V12 engine have been well documented. I believe that it's even in the latest edition of the DSM, so I would believe it. I think the sound of a Ferrari V12 could cure all ailments. I don't think there's any reason for Mercedes to get rid of Valtteri Bottas. He's been doing everything they've asked of him. He's managed to win a race so far this year. He will likely win another this year at very least. So I don't think Mercedes really have any alternative but to keep Valtteri Bottas. He is doing a great job. He can win if they need him to fight at the front. He can be a good wingman to Lewis Hamilton as well, as we saw today. Another 1-2 finish for those guys. So Bottas is doing everything he needs to do if he wants to keep that seat. And certainly I don't see anybody else on Mercedes' radar either. If there is a chance that Sebastian Vettel could leave Ferrari, would Mercedes go after him? Or, alternatively, is there a chance that when Fernando Alonso leaves McLaren in September, will Mercedes get rid of Bottas and say, Fernando, please, come here? There's also the chance of that, but still, I don't think so. I think the experience at Indianapolis has changed Fernando Alonso's outlook not only on Formula One, but on racing in general. I think he is starting to realize that there's more to it than just trying to be competitive and work with the team and be in this closed world of Formula One. After the engine blew up today, he ran up into the grandstands to go meet the fans. So I think Fernando Alonso, his heart may no longer be in this. For all the right reasons, don't get me wrong, but if he wanted to move to Mercedes, I don't know if it would be prudent for Mercedes to take Fernando Alonso, for example. Hamilton and Alonso in the same team, yes, we know what that looks like back in 2007. But remember, Fernando Alonso was the reigning world champion at that time. And now we're we're 10 years removed from that. Alonso hasn't been world champion for 11 years, and I think he has certainly mellowed out quite a bit. He's matured tremendously, as time does to anybody, and he's used now to the idea of not being at the front. If you put him at the front, obviously he would still be very competitive. He would be challenging for wins, and he would be winning. But I don't know if he would have that same sort of sense of entitlement now as he did in his first stint at McLaren next to Lewis Hamilton. I think Alonso was mostly peeved at the fact that Hamilton was a rookie and he was being given the preferential treatment as a McLaren protege for basically his entire life. And I think that's also the root of a lot of the criticisms that people have of Lewis Hamilton. It's not necessarily because of anything Hamilton himself has ever done, but it's the idea that particularly in his first year he was preferred very strongly by McLaren, and it was to the expense of Fernando Alonso. That's not Hamilton's fault. That's a McLaren problem, because they signed Hamilton, they put him in the number 2 car, as they should have done, but then they treated him like a number 1 driver, and Hamilton did not ask for that. Hamilton asked to drive a Formula 1 car, and that's what he was doing. So, really, the balance of the blame in that goes to McLaren. But if Hamilton and Alonso were to be on the same team again, I think there would be far less acrimony. I think Alonso has really matured a lot as a person, and I think that they might even build up somewhat of a warm relationship there. Hey, at this point, even if McLaren had a recap of 2005, it would still be far better than what they're doing now. When that McLaren was running in 2005, it either won the race or it blew up. So that's a gamble I'm willing to take right now if my name is McLaren International. In terms of drivers not following team orders, it is a trend. I remember Max Verstappen in 2015 at Singapore when he was driving for Toro Rosso. They asked him to move over, and he simply says, no, over the radio. And we're seeing that time and time again, and we saw that this afternoon with Force India and Sergio Perez. And it's up to the team in terms of how they need to handle that situation. If I am a team principal, my drivers sign contracts, and in that contract is a clause, at least if I were writing the contract, there's a clause that says if we give you an order during the race, wherever you are, whatever that order is, you must comply with it. And there would be penalties attached if you don't. So that's how I would do it. I don't know how these contracts are drawn up. Surely there's a huge legal team representing all involved parties, but I would assume it's in their contract. And yes, in terms of being quick in sim racing, it really is just practice. There's no magic involved. You just have to get yourself equipment that can perform good enough to run whatever you want to run, and then you just have to grind out lap after lap after lap, and it takes a very long time. I have been involved in sim racing in some form or another for 18 years, so I'm 25 years old, so that is a very big chunk of my life. So it takes a long time to get quick. And even at that, I am far from the quickest guys out there. There are guys on iRacing, for example, that absolutely make me look like an utter amateur. So no matter how good you are, or no matter how experienced you are, there's always going to be somebody better than you. So it's important just to make sure that you're doing it for your own enjoyment and that you accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish with it. Don't try to measure yourself against other people, because there's always going to be somebody better than you, and because it's effectively like the Wild West. There are no official sanctioning bodies for this sort of thing. There are no official manners in which you can practice and all that stuff. It's all just ad hoc, do it yourself. So whatever it is that you want to accomplish with sim racing, go for it and have fun while doing it, but don't get so caught up with trying to measure yourself against other people. Measure yourself against yourself, and if you can be happy at the end of the day, then don't worry about it. Yes, it is about having fun. It really is. It's about trying to get a sense of what these guys on TV do day in and day out, and trying to see if you can start to understand what that world is and how it operates. But moreover than that, I like it because I like cars, and it gives me the opportunity to try to do things with cars that I'll never be able to do in reality. So it's just enough to give us a little taste of what it must be like, and that's really what it's all about. And yes, I do agree. I think Fernando Alonso's heart is no longer in Formula One. He's had a good experience out in the United States at the Indy 500. He called into the Indy race last night, the TV coverage, and they put him on the spot there, and they asked him, could you come to IndyCar full time? And Alonso said, well, why not? So it's definitely on his mind, and again, the way that he jumped out of the car this afternoon, retiring from yet another race, and then running up into the grandstands to say hello to everybody, that's something I've never seen him do before, and yeah, that's very un-Formula One-like. That poisonous negativity, yeah, it's also somewhat similar to Juan Pablo Montoya. When he left McLaren in the middle of 2006, he also made some similar comments about F1 being very negative and very closed off, and obviously Montoya had experience in the United States in the past, winning the Indy 500 before going to Formula One in 2001, and that's where he returned. He went to NASCAR for a few years and back to IndyCar. He ran the Indy 500 last month, but he is largely retired now from full-time racing. Montoya, very similar comments, and he had a very similar experience as Fernando Alonso, as a matter of fact. Both drivers were McLaren drivers at one point or another. However, one more time to recap the results here from the 2017 Canadian Grand Prix. In first place, winning the race, Lewis Hamilton, car 44 for Mercedes-AMG Petronas. In P2, Valtteri Bottas, Hamilton's teammate, so a 1-2 finish for Mercedes. P3 for Daniel Ricciardo and the only remaining Red Bull. P4 for Sebastian Vettel, a nice recovery drive in the Ferrari. P5 for Sergio Perez, and P6 for Esteban Ocon, both for Force India, another great point-scoring day for Force India. P7, Kimi Raikkonen in the second Ferrari. P8 for Nico Hülkenberg in the Renault. P9, first career points for Lance Stroll on home soil, very nice drive for the Canadian. And P10, our final point scorer, Romain Grosjean for Haas. P11 for Julian Palmer. P12, Kevin Magnussen in the second Haas. P13 for Marcus Ericsson in the Sauber. P14, Stoffel Van Dorn in the only McLaren to take the checkered flag. P15 for Pascal Wehrlein in the second Sauber, and P16 classified, although not finished, Fernando Alonso. The Honda engine gave up with 2 laps to go. Not classified are Daniel Kvyat, Max Verstappen, Felipe Massa, and Carlos Sainz. Verstappen stopped with an apparent failure on his Red Bull, still not entirely sure what it was. Felipe Massa and Carlos Sainz taken out in Turn 1 incidents on lap 1. However, that does conclude our live commentary stream from the 2017 Canadian Grand Prix. We will see you again in 2 weeks from Azerbaijan. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the commentary, and of course, I hope you've enjoyed the live chat. Until Azerbaijan, however, thank you all very, very much. Ferrariman601 saying we will see you soon.